Okay, so now that we've kind of got a bit of introduction to myself, I just want to give you some of the thinking that was behind the class and, a bit of background of what I'm kind of asking you to engage in. Um, as we know, it is the Foucault Pendulum. And with this pendulum, there's a whole range of things that we're going to get you to think about. And it's going to be across the 2 days. I'm just going to break this down into smaller parts, though, just so I can talk a little bit about the reasoning behind structure of this class. Um, so the first part that I want you to think about is understanding. So this is ultimately going to be the first half, I would say, of the first day. And it's going to be a bunch of different ways of understanding. So first is desk research. The first few tasks that you're going to be doing will be reading up on what the pendulum is and the history of it, just very briefly, just to give you a bit of context. The next part, I'm actually getting you to watch some videos of how this works. Um, and this desk research is just, again, a very brief introduction. So as you watch these videos, the point isn't to fully understand what's going on in this, but just start to observe the language and what scientists are saying, how it works, and try and draw out as much from this understanding as you can. So at this point, a little bit of uncertainty. You're just building yourself a vague picture of the Foucault pendulum. The next point, we're actually going to be going over to your physics department. So observation. So after you've got a bit of a picture in your mind, after watching some videos of how the pendulum works and kind of some very brief history of kind of how it came about, you're going to go across to the physics department and go and see the pendulum that's there. So this pendulum um, is set up in a way that it has a long wire, and that long wire is running between the staircase over there. There's two parts to this. First is just to experience the pendulum in the real. So what does it feel like to watch a pendulum go back and forth after what you've learned? After what you've learned already about context, how does it feel to be watching something that does what it does? There's another part to this. It's not just your experience of the pendulum itself, but what we're really interested in you thinking about as designers is a bit of an observational study of the space. Think about it. People are moving through this space. People are going to experience this. How are they doing that? So we ask you to do a slight observational study um, and think about the space from a designer's perspective and as an educator. Then, hopefully, you'll have a physics student that will be able to talk to you a bit about the pendulum. So you've got now, rather than just desk research, a physics person describing to you kind of what the pendulum does and giving you an opportunity to ask some questions. Then, while still over there, we're going to begin the application of knowledge. So after observation, we'll get you to do some application. Um, now, this might be a bit scary for some of you. Definitely, if things get a bit too complicated, don't worry too much. But I've put together a way that you can, from observing and measuring the pendulum and returning later, you can start to actually apply some math and see what latitude you're in. Um, this is all described in the class notes, and you'll be assisted by your teachers. Um, but this is a really great opportunity to kind of curve out this three-tiered approach to your education. So a bit of desk research to get some brief context, painting a slight picture, some observation, which helps you kind of experience it through your body and in the real space, and application. So the application being trying to do some very basic science to start to apply what you've thought and learnt in a mathematical way. After this understanding, you're going to come back to the classroom and you're going to engage in story. So story is really a big thing that I find very important for art and design. So story here in this kind of context, I've really focused on the story of Leon Foucault. Okay, so there is story of Leon Foucault. Now, why you're engaging with this story is this is pretty much giving you color. It's giving you context to the creation in a point in time of the pendulum. So the background to Leon engaging with society, his personal story, the way he came about discovering, the ability to create this particular pendulum, how it was received, and yeah, you'll learn more about him. All kind of gives you material. Think of it like creative contextual material. So as a designer, you've understood the science enough, and now you're starting to paint some color and get some interest for yourself through the story. So once you have story, I've thought to try and give you an opportunity or a design task to then apply story to the science. So apply story. And I've done this by generating a bit of code. I created some code which you'll see in your course material. And this code ultimately plots a 2D path, a line, based on the kind of different data that you can plug in. But what I'm thinking for this is using it as kind of a design catalyst for you to think through. So now that you understand the science, you've got some interest in the story, how do you then come up with concepts using this line to then think through what a Foucault pendulum might be in an art or design situation? And in this, I've given you examples. So for me personally, it's important to give examples as an educator because I've got an idea in mind for ways in which you might engage with this. But I like to show you the ways I think. And I don't want you to think the way I think, but I want those things that I show you to kind of trigger some potential ideas for yourself. So ultimately, this one day will see you thinking through a whole range of things. And then one last thing that I want you to think about, sorry, let me just get another text to here, is relation. So we've understood the science, we've engaged with the story, and now we're going to think about others engaging with Foucault and the pendulum. So where, why, how, who, where else is the Foucault pendulum engaged with in society? Why are people engaging with the Foucault pendulum in those places? How are they doing it? And who are they? Giving yourself a context of others interrelationing, so having interrelational, having a relationship with others in your creativity practice creates a kind of context for yourself, placing yourself in relation to others in art design, education, and seeing what's possible. Also seeing possibly the limitations or holes of things as well. Maybe your idea doesn't fit within a space, so how do you create a new space for communicating that idea? Hopefully this has given you a bit of insight into my thinking around the construction of the class. This pretty much is quite a big first day, but as I'll describe to you tomorrow, or day 2, sorry, depends when you're watching this video, you'll be having a lighter day, and that day will be kind of more of a space for you to start to think through and consolidate some of the learning that you've done in day one. So if you're feeling a bit tired after day one, that's okay. And if you've missed any of these, that's okay too. You can always come back to and fill in the gaps as you move forward.